This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar. Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by our Barth.
That's a fit. That's a match.
No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
It's close because, as I've said, I think he's the best thrower of the football in this class. There's just a little part of me that and it's not nearly as much as other people, but there's still a little part of me that worries about the knee injury.
You're waffling.
No, I'm not.
No,
I'm not. I've had this take the whole time. You sound like Felger.
I know, that's why I needed
I've had this same take the whole time. If for whatever reason Drake,
wavering a little bit.
if for whatever reason Drake Maye goes second,
Stand on the table for your guy. Here, Barth, you got to stand on the table for the people you believe in.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so you got to do. You got to pound the table. You're in the draft room.
Yeah, I'm the
all
guy
the
that
scouts are around the table, and you get in there and you say, "This is my guy."
Yeah, I'm the guy that doesn't pound the table. I'm the guy that's never pounded the table.
That's true. That's what I'm hearing about you and Michael Penix. You're waffling.
I don't know about that.
Hello, everybody. It's Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, Patriots Catch-22, here with you on our normal 10 a.m. time on a Thursday morning here at a packed Gillette Stadium. Barth, you want to tell the people about motocross? Are you excited?
Whatever it is,
you
there's
came
a ton,
in here hot.
There's a
about
ton
it.
going on out there. There's a ton of trucks everywhere.
You know, as a kid, and we don't really have time for deliberating about non-football stuff today because we do have to end the show a little bit early. We have to end the show a little bit early today, Morel, because it's only an hour and a half today, because we're gonna go talk to Sion Taki, right, and Chuk Sakorafor, right? Those are the two guys speaking. I should know that. Two new guys though that we haven't talked to since they signed as free agents with the Patriots, so that'll be fun. And but the big thing is when I was a kid, you know this about me already, but my dad's a huge NASCAR guy.
Your dad's a big car guy, right?
He works in the automotive industry, and he's a huge NASCAR guy. So me and him used to go up to Loudon in New Hampshire all the time for the race.
I wish I had
year.
done that because they don't do it anymore, right?
Yeah.
I always wished I'd done
they
that.
do it.
Oh, they still do it? I thought they
yeah.
stopped at one point.
No.
So I do want to do that.
So we would go almost every year, and this motocross event reminds me a lot of that because every single participant has his own truck, has his own team.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
All that kind of stuff. So when you pull up to Loudon, there's like 50 different teams and trucks, and you can go around and you can buy merch, your favorite person. We were a big Hendricks Motorsports people. My dad's favorite was Terry Labonte, if you want to know. I was a big Jeff Gordon guy.
Oh, so I had Jeff Gordon poster when I was growing up, of course.
So you had a Jeff Gordon poster in your room?
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Really?
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I had Jeff Gordon poster right in between a Teddy Bruschi poster and a Manny Ramirez poster.
Wow, was not expecting that. Anyways, so that's enough of
There's
that.
a Paul Pierce poster in there too, just so you.
Yeah, there's a lot of Celtic stuff in my room.
Sure.
As you know. Anyways, so first we got to shout out our friends at Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. And are you doing a little spring cleaning around the house at all, Barth?
I should.
That
comes after the draft, but yes.
We got to switch out. We put some of our, we don't have a ton of room, so we put some of our clothes in storage and flip it over.
Yep.
So we're getting to that point where I got to go get my polos, get all my summer stuff in the closet. So if you're doing a little spring cleaning, Bob's Discount Furniture can help. Shop storage packs styles like super comfy sectionals with built-in storage, party-ready dining cabinets and storage seating, and best-selling beds with built-in drawers. All at Bob's everyday low prices. Spring into the season at your newest Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. All right, so today we're gonna be a little defense heavy. I know everybody's saying, "Oh, why? Who cares about the defense in this draft?" I get it, but we got to talk about both sides of the ball. We got to talk about all the different permutations and things that could happen for the Patriots. And you have a defensive-minded head coach. I wouldn't say that we should ignore defense. I think that there's a chance still that the Patriots are going to hit some defensive
They're
picks.
scheduled for 8 picks right now. We think there's a chance they trade down. They're not going to draft 8, 9, 10 offensive players. That's just the numbers don't work. At a certain point, you got to get guys on the field. You're not going to draft guys that aren't going to play in camp. So there are going to be, I don't know how much time we need to spend on Terry and Arnold and Dallas Turner, right? Or even Cooper DeJean. But I would be really surprised if the draft is nothing but it should be mostly offense, but I'd be very surprised if it's nothing but offense.
It should be offense in the top 100. I think I'll give them this. Once you get to pick, because I'm preparing myself for them taking a defensive player higher than I want them to. Once you get to pick 68, I think you get to the point where if you have a defensive player rated so highly on your board that he is much, much better than the offensive talent that's available on the board, which there's a chance, there's a big run at receivers in round 2, and all these guys that we've been talking about for the last 6 months, the Ricky Pearsalls of the world and those types of players. There's a chance that all those types of guys are gone by 68 because of how much talent there is on the offensive side of the ball. So I think pick 68 is the starting point of where I'm going to start thinking about, okay, if there's a really good defensive player here that I could see them taking it. The spots that I
would even say if they trade down at some point, even if it's from 34, if your 4th pick comes in at the late 50s, but you've already taken a couple of good players, you have some more flexibility there.
Yeah, I the 2 spots that I look at for them on defense. And I want to talk about Kyle Duggar's contract extension as well, because we haven't talked about that on the air. It happened on Sunday, so we haven't been on the air yet since that happened. The 2 spots that I look at for them on defense, I think edge rusher is always a spot that you can add talent at in any draft. And you look at Matthew Judon in the contract year. You only brought Josh Uche back for a year. I know that they have Anthony Jennings locked up now, and they have Keon White on his rookie contract for 3 more years. So they have 2 guys. But in terms of pass rush, those 2 guys are not pass rushers in the sense of Judon and Uche, right? At least off the edge. I think Keon White, when you reduce him inside, can be an effective pocket pusher, but he's not a 10-sack guy. I don't think he's ever going to be that in his NFL career. So you look at edge rusher, I think that's a spot that – just looking 2 years away, the 2025 roster, that becomes a need. And the other one, I think we're both in agreement.
I'll just say this on edge rusher too. Yeah. There's some very interesting day 3 project guys. So guys that are probably going to need a year. So that kind of lines up with your timeline.
Right. The other spot that I'm still steadfast that they need to address, and this is segues into Kyle Duggar, is I still think that they need that true free safety.
Yes.
I still think they need that true center fielder.
Yes.
I don't think he needs to be Devin McCourty in the sense of I don't think he needs to be a guy that plays every snap on defense. What I'm more looking for them to do is maybe add a Duron Harmon type, that obvious pass situations, 3rd down, money downs, late in games, things like that, 2-minute, 4-minute, that kind of stuff. You're able to have a guy up top that puts Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers where they belong.
You just want to be able to have that club in your bag. You don't need to always be able to go to it, but you want to be able to have the option.
Right. So I still look at free safety or center fielder or whatever you want to call it, that true deep middle of the field player. I still look at that as a need for this team that I would be okay with them addressing early on day 3, because I think that really would complete the defense. I think they would be a complete defense at that point if they had that true center fielder. So with Kyle Duggar, my initial reaction, I will admit, I was a little surprised about the money. I'm not a guy that really cares about the money too often. I think that the salary cap is crap. I think you can easily manipulate everything. I don't think that this contract in any sort of way, shape, or form is going to prohibit them from making bigger moves down the line. If they decide on draft weekend that they don't really love any of the receiver talent that falls to day 2, and they want to trade 34 for T. Higgins and then pay him, Kyle Duggar's contract is not going to prohibit them from doing that.
Right.
The thing that surprised me about the money was they weren't really competing with anybody for his services for this year. I think Andrew Callahan confirmed that he had no other formal offers on the table. So you were almost paying him to do this thing where we're just taking care of one of our guys. And I get that to an extent, but they gave him a market value contract. This is not a hometown discount type of deal. So I was a little bit surprised about how much money it was, just simply based off the timing of it. There was no rush to hand him $30 million guaranteed. There was nobody knocking down his door that was going to outbid you. It wasn't an unrestricted free agent. I get that you want to make good by the player. I get you don't want him to be frustrated. I get that you don't want him to be upset with his contract situation and make an example of we're going to take care of our guys. I get all of that, and there's a place for that. I was a little surprised about the contract value. The one thing I will say, though, on the plus side for it, I think Kyle Duggar has gotten a little bit too much hate or almost underrated at this point by some Patriots fans that I see. Granted, it's just my mentions, and I understand that's a terrible way to do this, but I think in general, last year, the consensus was down year, didn't play very well, really not a high-end coverage player, more of a boomer bust type of player. I think Bedard had the Jamie Collins, but safety Jamie Collins comparison with Kyle Duggar. I think Kyle Duggar is a better player than that. I think that Kyle Duggar brings a ton of versatility and wears a ton of different hats to the table that you can't just replace that with any other player, because you need the size, you need the physicality, and you need the play speed and the athleticism to do it. Right. So he can play. He's one of the most versatile players just in terms of different alignments and spots that he lines up in the defense in the entire league. Plays out basically at all three levels of the defense. Can play over the slot, can play deep, can play in the box, can guard tight ends. He does it all. So that's very, very valuable and hard to just replace with one player. The other thing is I love Jabril Peppers. I think Jabril Peppers is a really solid player for them. But with that being said, I think Kyle Duggar is a better player than Jabril Peppers. And I think Jabril Peppers last year had a peak season for Jabril Peppers. Whereas for Kyle Duggar, I think he could have Jabril Peppers' season every year. You know what I mean? I think that he's somebody that could repeat that. I don't know if Jabril Peppers is someone that is going to have that kind of impact on the ball every single season. And I like Peppers. I'm just saying I think Duggar's a more consistent threat out there.
I mean, look, I think Peppers can. I think you look at what's gone on throughout his career, because he also, let's not forget, had a dominant season in 2020, and then he tears the ACL. He's got to come back off of that, new team, all of that. This was really only the second time in his career he was set up to have a good season, and he did. I'm with you, though, on I think you paid Kyle Duggar this money. And look, they paid him what he's worth. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's, the team won the deal. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the player won the deal. That's the price of doing business in the NFL for both sides. I think it is a contract. Depending on what you go by, AAV, guaranteed money, whatever, he's somewhere between the 5th and 7th highest paid safety in the league. That's probably going to drop a little bit once the Bucs get Antoine Winfield off the tag. That's about right. He's a top 10 fringe, top 5 safety in the league.
Is he?
If he takes that next step that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But for him to take that next step, for him to be worth the contract, he needs to be a box safety. The only way this becomes a bad contract is if you sign him to it and then you play him at free safety. Because you could have paid a free safety who will give you that level of play for a lot less.
Xavier McKinney.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Kyle Duggar is not a free safety. If you play him in the box and Peppers in the box, you're maximizing two very, very, very good players. And they've been able to structure it like that before with two box safeties. But you need somebody on the back end. You need a center fielder. So I was working on a mock draft before they signed this, and I had them taking a free safety kind of high. Now, I had them trading down first.
Of course you did.
But
you have to have 17 trades in your mock draft.
I had 3, and it was specifically a trade-down draft, so calm down. I had them taking a safety kind of high, and then before I published it, they re-signed Duggar, and I went back and looked at it, and I actually had this. No, this is actually a better pick now that they've signed. It was Tyler Nubin was the safety from Minnesota, who is he's a center fielder, instinctual, nobody gets behind him safety.
Yeah, good player.
And I actually felt that was a better signing after the Duggar, or a better draft pick after the Duggar signing, because, well, if you draft a guy like, and maybe it's not Nubin, I had him taking him at 47, that's maybe a little high without a bunch of trades, but having a guy like that is going to allow you to maximize Kyle Duggar, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I just feel that way. I think a lot of people do that. I remember last year I did a piece right before the season about replacing Devin McCourty. I talked to Devin for it, and Devin McCourty's take was he went back to the Harmon, Chung, McCourty threesome.
Yeah,
that was his team in his eyes. Okay, no offense to the late era Devin McCourty Patriots, but those were his guys. Those were his brothers, right? Those were his players. So he looked at it and he said, when it was third down, in the fourth quarter, tie game, we need to get off the field and get Tom the ball back. I'm playing the robber, intermediate routes. Harmon's playing up top. He's playing the deep middle, and Chung's on the tight end. And we knew that that's where we were all going. It was something that we could just do. And it was something that we just had, such a sixth sense of where everybody was going to be and how we were going to pass stuff off and how we were going to leverage things. And there was no questions. There was no uncertainty with the back end. I think that this Patriots iteration, this defense, is still struggled at times last year with finding that rhythm of who's at where when the money's on the line, where are we all going to go? And I think that ideally you have a guy like Kyle Duggar playing that rat middle of the field robber type of role because he is instinctual. He does have ball skills. We've seen those interceptions before where he comes out into the middle of the field and picks off an in-breaker like against the Miami last year down in Miami when he picked off Tua on the first drive. Like we've seen him make those types of plays before as that robber, and that still frees up. Like you still need the middle of the field guy. And I still think that, Peppers can play in those types of packages, but I would honestly ideally say that you would have somebody. I don't think Peppers is a man coverage on tight ends type of guy. So that part of it I think is a little bit murky, is how exactly this fits together and how they move forward with Peppers and Duggar being their two primary safeties, if that's the case. But that brings us to the draft talk, which is why I wanted to lead the show off with this, because we can talk about the safeties in the draft, of course. And you mentioned Newbin, probably the consensus number one safety in this class. I would say not a lot of first round talents in this class. I don't think there's going to be anybody drafted in the first round. Newbin's probably the first guy off the board in the 40s is where he's currently projected to go. So we did our day 1, day 2, day 3 guys. I kind of loaded up a couple more on day 2 and day 3 just because I figured we're not really going to talk too much about day 1 safeties. Yeah. The one guy that I don't know where we want to put that could be in this day 1 safety conversation is Cooper DeJean. I think Cooper DeJean has the long speed and has the ability to play corner in the league, but he is a little bit tight in the hips, and it doesn't have great change of direction skill in coverage, where if he's playing a lot of corner and he's facing a lot of dynamic route runners, I think he's going to have trouble playing man coverage against those guys. So maybe Cooper DeJean's natural position in the league is actually more safety, or at least like a nickel safety, where he's probably playing a little bit more in the slot. What are your thoughts on Cooper DeJean? Because there is a world, and I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but we have to talk about all the options. There's a world where if they make that Minnesota trade and they have 11 and 23, that Cooper DeJean at 23 is an enticing pick.
So I like Cooper DeJean. I almost don't want to box him into a role. If I'm a team that drafts him, and I think I looked at this more in the context of those teams that are drafting late. Like the Eagles need help in the secondary, right? And I took him in the Eagles in one of my mocks, and they obviously do a lot of different things on defense. I'm drafting Cooper DeJean to play him different every week. I'm drafting Cooper DeJean as a chess piece. Hey, we want you covering the running back this week. Hey, we want you playing on the outside this week. Hey, we want you playing safety this week. Like, I think that's the true value in him, is just his instincts and his raw athleticism, and you can use him however you kind of like you talked about Kyle Duggar a little bit. Now, does that make him a safety? I guess. I think he could play more corner than Kyle Duggar does, obviously, but I would draft him as a matchup player. Yeah. I would draft him as there's going to be one guy every week that you need an answer for, and he's going to be the guy that gives you that answer.
I that's the way I look at it too, not just with Duggar and the safeties, but also looking at Christian Gonzalez. Like Christian Gonzalez, to me, is your boundary corner that's going to match up against the other team's best receiver every single week and cover him all over the field. Whereas Cooper DeJean he can put out fires. Like one week in the game plan, maybe he's playing more up top. The next week, maybe he's playing more down low in the slot. I think he could play a little bit of outside corner. Like I do think that there's that ability in his game. I really liked watching him. I think he's a really impressive player. I think he moves at a different speed than a lot of other guys. Definitely has the speed in terms of like straight line ability to play outside in the NFL. Like I mentioned, the change of direction isn't great. But you talk about a three-phase player. You talk about a guy that could definitely play on special teams at a high volume.
So I don't know if you watched him as a kick returner. I doubt you did.
A little bit.
Oh yeah,
I watched some of the highlights.
He's a tremendous kick returner too,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing. If you're drafting him, you have your kick returner.
Yeah, him and Marcus Jones back on returns on this new rule could
be a ton of fun. Yeah,
cause some havoc. So I'm a Cooper DeJean guy. I know wouldn't be a popular pick for a lot of people, but I'm high on Cooper DeJean. Do you have any day one safeties? Probably not.
No.
Okay, so let's go to day two. Who do you got on day two?
Day two, I guess I'll go with Newman. What are we counting Cam Kitchens as?
In terms of what day he's available? I think he's going to be available on day 3.
All right, so
but we can talk about him.
I'll go with Tyler Newman. Just like I said, I think in terms of the true center fielder, because there's so many guys now that come in that, they play a lot of free safety, but it's not their true position, and they're also slot corner. They also play in the box, and they rotate and things like that. Tyler Newman you can put him on the back end. He's going to read and react. He's going to make sure nobody gets behind him. He doesn't have the elite. If there's one thing lacking from his game, he maybe doesn't have that elite straight line speed.
Yeah.
But he's one of these players where he plays a lot faster than he tests because he's able to see and react to things so quickly that he can make up for it a little bit. So if they're trying to find the next Devin McCourty, and I mean, that's a lofty, obviously, comparison, but you're not going to get closer in this draft than Tyler Newman. I don't know how close Tyler Newman is because Devin McCourty is like an all-time great player, but he's as close as you're going to get.
So I like Newman, but
Yeah.
I do worry a little bit about the speed over the top. When you're in the league, like, you have to be able to get from the middle of the field to the sideline.
Yeah.
You have to be able to cover that route. It's not so much about that you just have to be there to at least threaten the window so that the quarterback has to make a perfect throw to fit the ball in there. That's tough to do if you don't have like true 4.4 speed or like Devin, who was in the 4.3s.
Right.
That's difficult to do. The guy that I really thought was excellent on film in that role, playing over the top, was Kalen Bullock from USC. I think Kalen Bullock from USC is probably the best true post safety in the draft. Just one of those guys that has the speed, the hip flips, the really smooth pedal and turn out of it. Good instincts back there, can see things. His problem, and I know everybody's going to hear this and be like, well, that's like 75% of defensive football is that he can't tackle. So that's the issue. Is if you're going to play him as the last line of defense, his angles to the ball, and he's a inconsistent kind of wild, lunge at people.
Well, see, that's what I worry, because what did Belichick tell McCourty? GTFB?
Yeah.
Last line defense, you got to be able to make that play.
You got to be able to tackle if you're going to play on first and second down.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have runs come at you every once in a while. If I'm just drafting a guy at 68, 102, whatever, to just play the Deron Harmon role and play up top on third down, I don't think anybody moves better on film than Bullock. And he's pretty good at understanding which routes are the most threatening routes and where to leverage things, and he can rotate a little bit. I think he can play a little bit of man coverage. He's not great in man coverage, but if you want to go like cover 0 and you're going to put him in man coverage off of rotation, then he's able to do that. But it's just mainly that ability from the middle of the field to get all the way out to the sideline, and he's taller than a lot of these other guys we're going to talk about too.
A lot of big safeties in this draft, though.
Yeah, but he's tall and lean. He's not Duggar sized. He's not 220 pounds. He's a tall, lean guy, which that length and that verticality helps you go ahead and high point the ball and get the ball out of the guy's hands, and it's that little bit extra length can really help when playing over the top. So, do I like him as like a every down safety? No, because I think in run support, he's frankly a liability right now. But I think that if you're just looking for a guy to play on third down and play the center field role, the Deron Harmon of this all, then I don't think you can find a better guy in terms of movement skills on film than Bullock. The other guy that I had on day 2, who I think is more late day 2, but I think could sneak into day 2, is Taylor Demerson from Texas Tech.
Yeah, he's a good player.
So Dadarian Taylor Demerson from Texas Tech is the one knock on him is he's like 5'10", 190, right? He's a little bit smaller than some of these other guys, especially Bullock. But I think, when you watch him, instincts off the charts, ball skills, can play different roles back there. He made a play against Xavier Worthy where he had like inside leverage and help in the middle of the field, and Xavier Worthy ran a double move, and Worthy dusted his man in man coverage, but Taylor Demerson sniffed it out and got over the top of Worthy in time, and Ewers ended up having to take a sack because he was waiting for Worthy to get open. And he has these just great instincts and ability to recognize routes and anticipate routes, and he's a baller. Like he's a one of those guys that just plays with his hair on fire and plays with that intensity.
How do you feel about Javon Bullard?
What I worry about him is that I think he's a little bit too big and stiff,
stocky.
Yeah. I think that he reminds me so much of these guys that they play, that they like in the box. A Peppers, a Mapu, a Duggar.
Well, it was weird because Georgia moved him. He was a box. He was a slot corner, but he was a slot corner box safety. And then last year, Georgia moved him to free safety, and he wasn't bad at it.
Yeah.
But I struggle with it because I see him playing it well, but it's tough to see the translation to the pros as a free safety. I think he could be a good nickel in the NFL. I don't see him as a free safety.
I think he's a nickel. I think he's going to be a good nickel.
Yeah.
But I think he's a nickel kind of in the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson type mold. The one thing I would say about Georgia too is that their defense is very split safety heavy. For the most part, they play a lot of split safety coverage. So they don't ask their safeties to play post middle too often. They ask their safeties to play halves most of the time. And so there's a bunch of guys that, going back a ways with Georgia that I'm always thinking, oh, that guy would be great here. This would be a corner that, can play press man, that play on the outside, would be a great fit for the Patriots. And they never really draft any of those guys. And I think because Kirby's system is just different enough from theirs that it's a little bit of a harder translation. The other guy that you mentioned until we get to the real day three guys is Cam Kitchens from Miami. So you should mention with Cam Kitchens the Alonzo Highsmith connection, right? So Alonzo Highsmith just came from Miami. I do think he has a relationship with Cam Kitchens. So this is somebody that I think is definitely on their radar.
Both we'll throw it in both Miami safeties. James Williams too, but James Williams is more of a pure box safety. Yeah,
so Cam Kitchens' his film is totally boomer bust right now. Totally he has some plays where he gets really exposed, and then he has some awesome plays on the ball. It's really Jekyll and Hyde, and then the athleticism is a problem. Tested. I think his relative athletic score was 2 point something out of 10.
He had a rough combine.
Horrible combine, and I don't think that he looks on film like a great athlete either. But he's very
I think he looks like a better nobody's going to mistake him for Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
I think he looks like a better athlete on film than he tested.
Better in the sense that I just think that he's got some more recovery talent than I thought. When he does get beat or he is a little bit out of position, he can recover decently well. But we talked about going from the middle to the sideline. I don't think he's got that kind of straight line speed.
I think he can get out and change direction and move.
Yeah, no, he's not I don't think the combine did him any justice.
Right.
I think that he's a better athlete than that. It's probably just a bad day or not his thing to be testing in shorts and a t-shirt at the combine, which is totally fine. But I was hoping for more Brian Branch testing numbers. Yeah. So Brian Branch, everybody's oh God, he bombed. He did way better at the combine than Kitchens did. Which could be helpful for if he falls to day 3 and he's a 4th or 5th round pick because he tested so poorly. I think that he's definitely a guy that's going to be one of those guys that we look at 3 years from now and are we really overrated that combine.
Well, that he's also a guy that it sounds like has interviewed well. Teams talk about his leadership, things like that, and that's what they've talked about. So I think he belongs on the radar, and if they can get him on day 3, he's definitely worth that look.
Yeah.
He's certainly worth that look.
I agree. I just think that he's another one of these gamers, instinctual, really smart, savvy player that's going to make up for the fact that he doesn't have 4.3 speed with being maybe a step or two ahead of some of these other guys.
At the very least, if you get him at 103, he's going to be excellent on special teams.
Yeah.
And that's going to people are going to roll their eyes at that. With the new kickoff, I can't stress enough how much the new kickoff rule changes things. That's a very important play now. And you got to have guys that can play it.
Yeah, it's an important play. And when you start talking about day 3 guys, too, if they're going to make the roster and have roles, especially early on in their careers, they're going to have to be able to play on special teams.
So can I tell you my theory about this?
Yeah.
And this is something I'm still it's an in-process take. But
it's a half-baked take.
No, I wouldn't say it's half-baked. So we talked about this last week, how There's like no 6th or 7th round guys in this draft. There's like guys that are like 4th, 5th round grades and then undrafted.
Yeah.
Because of NIL and things like that. I wonder, with the draft structured like that and the new kickoff rule, if teams are just going to use the 6th and 7th round to build their kickoff coverage and kickoff return units and just get guys that are defensively really good tacklers in space, really good movers, block shedders, and then guys that can block on the run, guys that can block in space, some of these faster, more athletic tackles. And I wonder if 6 and 7 are just going to be building out the kickoff units.
Yeah, it's definitely I mean, I think that's kind of what they did last year, honestly, with Amir Speed.
Right.
And
no, but I mean, like, league-wide.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I think the Patriots were a little bit ahead of that,
right? As
they always seem to be on special teams in particular. Yeah. So maybe that's the case. Like I look
at Kitchens wouldn't be a part of that. He should go earlier. But I'm just saying in general.
Yeah, I just think that some of these guys, you have to be able to play in that phase early on in your career. Like, look at a guy like Marty Mapu. Like, he couldn't get in on defense after some mistakes early on, but he found a role for himself on special teams, made a play in Denver, that helped them win that game. Like, that's the way that you get on the team. That's the way that you get a game day role. That's how you're active on game day. If you're a 5th, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round pick, day 3 guy, you got to be able to play on teams. Like, you're not going to make the team otherwise.
Yeah.
All right. A couple more guys on day 3. I do think we should mention Sione Vika.
I think we have to talk about Sione Vaki.
Yeah. So he's an interesting player because he can play offense and defense as well.
And like he actually can. Like he has NFL running back upside. Yeah.
Running back upside. Teams have asked him to work out. I think he did running back drills at the combine, and I'm sure in these private visits they've had him doing running back drills as well. So he can play running back. I don't think that he's probably not a draftable NFL running back if he was
fringe,
just a running back. But guys hit like that all the time in UDFA statuses and stuff like that. I think he's more of a box safety too.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't have the speed and the change of direction ability and the fluidity in his hips to be able to play up top. But he's going to play 3 phases potentially. Worst case scenario, he's a defensive player and a core special teams guy. So you start talking about these day 3 guys. He's probably 5th, 6th round, somewhere in there, maybe earlier if some team really, really likes his running back film and sees him as a true 3-phase guy. But I think he's someone that is definitely a Patriot type of player that we should talk about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The versatility, very physical player. He has that leadership, tangible thing.
Yeah.
I would be very surprised if he's not on their board.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple more. I've had Tyke Smith on my board for them for 3 years, and he just wouldn't come to school. There's always a couple guys like that. Isaiah Williams is a receiver from Illinois, is another guy. I guess less now because he is the reason I always like Tyke Smith for them is he doesn't really have a position on defense. He'll play in the slot. He'll play a little on the boundary. He'll play a little deep. He can play in the box, and I just he's decent at all of them, and they'd find a role. Honestly, kind of reminds me of a bigger, more physical Miles Bryant. And maybe, they lost Miles Bryant. Maybe they want somebody back in that role. Again, I don't love the idea of them adding more because he truly is a box safety. That's going to be his main position.
Yeah.
In a slot corner. They have enough box safeties. They could, I guess, use a slot corner, but that's more one that's just like, I've had this guy on my radar for years. I think it makes less sense now than it did a while ago, but he's finally in the draft, so I have to talk about him. The other guy I like, and I've talked to you about him, Evan, is Evan Williams from Oregon.
Yeah.
Who had a really good Senior Bowl, and I think if they're going to wait on that free safety thing and want to take a guy who's more of a project, he's a 6th, 7th round pick, but had a really good Senior Bowl, does a good job of getting to the football. You talk about the closing speed, the ability to gain ground quickly.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I think he does very well. You need him to get to a spot. He'll get to the spot, and that's a very important part of playing on the back end.
Yeah, he was one of the only guys in Mobile that I feel like consistently made an impact playing the post. Actually could make plays on the ball. Definitely was on my list after the Senior Bowl and after being down there for those practices, especially watching practices where they were practicing in between the 20s. The last day was red zone.
Right.
It wasn't as big of an impact, but in between the 20s, I think that he's one of those guys that, like you said, probably a late day 3 pick. But if we're still just going for that plays on 3rd down, plays the middle of the field, I think there's a role for him if he's able to do those types of things. All right, so those are safeties. I think that this safety class has some fits for them. The last couple years, I've struggled at times to find some guys that could really fit what they need at safety with that center field role. And this class, I think, has a few that are in the range that they would want to draft a safety in. That third, fourth round, I think, is where we start talking about it. I picked a Taylor Demerson. I don't know if he's going to be there, but I picked him at 102 in my mock.
Just counting now. I've got in the projected top 250 players, I've got 12 safeties I could see realistically being on their board. And he's probably going to be UDFA. I don't know if you watch any of Trey Taylor from Air Force.
No.
He's there, and the rules around Service Academy players getting pro now in all sports are just kind of, they're always changing. They're always weird. So I'm always hesitant about that. But like he, multi-year starter, again, team captain at the Air Force, was good. Had a good Shrine Bowl. Slightly bigger guy. Like, he checks a lot of their safety box, but he's probably going to go undrafted.
Yeah, so I think that this is one of those classes, and we've talked about this in the past, how college football has really gone away from that like true center field guy. They play so much quarters and half, split safety coverages,
or just move guys around, and
it just is not. You don't find, and I'm not saying that it's easy to find an Ed Reed or something like that, but you just don't find those guys anymore that are true ball.
But even a guy like
Deron
Harmon,
safeties.
Deron Harmon, you don't see a ton of guys that just have a lot of reps playing center field, playing single high.
And there's guys in this draft.
There's a handful, yeah.
Is my point. Okay. Let's move on to edge rushers.
You want to just go corner? You want to just finish up secondary?
Okay, fine. Sure. I have two guys that we haven't talked about at corner.
Okay.
Cooper DeJean, I put as corner. I'm not sure where teams are going to put him.
He's a defensive back.
Yeah. The other guy I think we're both all in on is Cam Hart from Notre Dame.
I really like Cam Hart.
So Cam Hart I think is a day 2 pick. 4'5" at that size, 6'3", 205 I think is what he was. That checks every box for that type of player. All you got to do to like Cam Hart, other than watch the Senior Bowl practices because he was great down there in Mobile, he's been great against top competition all year long. Go watch Ohio State. Go watch him guard Marvin Harrison Jr. Probably the best cornerback film I've seen against Marvin Harrison Jr. This year, because he's got the length and he's got the physicality and he's got the speed to go out up against a guy like Marvin Harrison on the outside. He is a physical guy, though, and I think the one thing that you worry about with him is he gets a little bit grabby at times in coverage. In college, you can kind of get away with those things a little bit more. In the pros, those could be flags. He only had 4 penalties against him last year, which, given his style of play, is not that bad. But if you get to the NFL, holdings, illegal contacts, DPIs, like those things start to get into the conversation with Cam Hart. But what I love so much about Cam Hart, we said this with Cooper DeJean about being like a true fire putter outer, just going all over the defense. With Cam Hart, if the Patriots play a team that has one of those 6'3" X receivers, that's not necessarily the best receiver on the team, but is just a guy that's got a tough body type to cover.
Bengals.
Sure, the Bengals. He can take that player for 70 snaps, and then Gonzalez can go and cover like the more dynamic number 1 receiver. So they're going to play teams like that over the course of the season. A great example, you say the Bengals is a good one. The New York Jets now. Cam Hart goes against Mike Williams the entire game. Gonzo's got Garrett Wilson, and you've got a nice complete secondary in terms of outside corners. I think in their system, press man coverage, suffocate guys at the line of scrimmage, smother their routes. Cam Hart would be a perfect fit.
Former receiver, too. I love that. I always like that in corners. And, he plays his best against best competition. Marvin Harrison Jr. at Senior Bowl. I got tell me what you think of this comp for him.
Yeah.
Logan Ryan.
Do you think – I think he's more physical than Logan Ryan was, though.
Logan Ryan is maybe I'm misremembering how physical Logan Ryan was. I remember him being pretty physical.
Yeah. Maybe I'm misremembering. So I think of Logan Ryan as more of a slot.
Okay.
Especially later on in his career. But yeah, I hear what you're saying in the sense that at the top of the route, if he's facing guys that can really get open at the top of the route, he's going to have some trouble. And Logan Ryan was one of those guys that did give up a lot of catches but made a lot of tackles.
Well, no, I meant it more just like to your point. Logan Ryan, I felt like early on played maybe a little too physically, and he would get flagged a lot. And then later in his career, he kind of figured it out.
Okay.
I meant it more in that sense.
Yeah.
So again, not a perfect comp, but no, I really like Cam Hart. He's being mocked right now in like the 90s, early day 3. I don't get that. He's a little stiff, but you're not. If you're drafting him as a CB1, I don't know if there's enough there. He's a really good, like you said, second corner when you have that sticky coverage guy opposite him who can just, go punch for punch with these bigger physical receivers, and that's the exact kind of guy the Patriots need. You did skip over a couple guys. I don't know how many we're going to do, but there's some other day 2 guys I think worth mentioning that maybe could. So Max Melton's probably not going to fall to them. Like Max Melton, 4 block kicks in college.
How many? So this is my question because I not to cut you off, but Max Melton, Sandstrill, all these guys,
those are 2 of the 3 I was going to mention.
Sandstrill's one of the best players to watch in this draft.
He's
local kid
awesome,
too,
isn't he?
He's fantastic. I think that there's a chance that he goes end of first round.
So is he a corner or is he like Cooper DeJean where you're just gonna play him wherever?
I think he's a nickel. I think he's a slot corner.
But I think if you need to play him on the boundary, you can play him on the boundary. I think if you need to play him at safety, you can. He's probably going to live at nickel, but
I think he could play on the boundary. Again, it's all about body types and skill sets. If he's going out on the boundary with like a shifty guy that just can play inside and outside, then sure. But I don't think that he's like your starting boundary corner.
No. But I'm saying again with Cooper DeJean, where we said, what's the matchup this week? His role is gonna change every week depending on where you play him.
Such a Patriot.
I think he's that kind of guy.
Type of guy, I know he's more decorated coming out than Jonathan Jones, but I think that just in terms of like the feistiness and the competitiveness and the tackling ability in the open field and the speed he plays with, he's exactly what the Patriots look for in corners, and he is shot out of a cannon.
If they're going to surprise us and take a defensive player higher than we think, he's probably the guy.
Yeah, he's awesome.
So Max Melton, I also like. The other one is Chris Abrams-Strain from Missouri. So again, wide receiver convert like that. He
another feisty guy.
Right. Again, he plays with real physicality. He's a tweener. He's 5'11". He played mostly on the boundary at Missouri, but they worked him some in the slot, I believe, at the Senior Bowl, right? So you're going to be able to move him around. And because the question to me when you look at are they drafting a corner is what's the plan for Jonathan Jones?
Yeah.
Are you looking at Jonathan Jones as your second boundary corner opposite Gonzalez or with Marcus Jones in the slot? Or is Jonathan Jones moving back inside and you're going to go out and get a real second boundary corner? So, if that's the plan, then you're taking a guy like Cam Hart.
Yeah.
If you're going to keep Jonathan Jones on the outside or move him around, a guy like Chris Abrams-Drain, you've got a ton of flexibility now in your coverages with Drain and Jonathan Jones. And we'll see if Marco Wilson makes the team or Sean Wade makes the team. These are guys that can play from all these different alignments. And for a secondary that traditionally under Belichick praise themselves on being positionally diverse, like a guy like Abrams-Drain makes a ton of sense. So does Mike Sanders still, like we just talked about, but he's going to go much higher.
Mike Sanders still, to me, is Jonathan Jones' replacement. I love Jonathan Jones.
And that's the other thing here. Jonathan Jones entering a contract year.
And he's getting older.
Right.
So I look at Sandstrill as Jonathan Jones. I don't know.
But Jonathan Jones has been a boundary corner the last 3 years.
He has, but it's all, to me, it's less about where he's, where PFF says he's playing and more about the type of receiver that he's covering. So I think that Sandstrill, to me, is the type of guy that can shadow some of these shiftier inside-outside types of players. So they're playing Miami.
You put him on like Jaylen Waddle?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would. I with help, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think he could. And that to me is Jonathan Jones. Sandstrill to me is going to be a really, really good number 2 corner.
Yeah.
Probably. That is ideally on third down and in nickel type of situations is probably playing in the slot, but it can play on the boundary in your base defense as well. And I think that I would look at him as classic Belichick thing of Jonathan Jones getting up there in age. He's going to need a new contract. Maybe we draft his replacement this year, let him train under Jonathan Jones, and then pass the torch to Sandstrill. That's how I view him. And in some ways, I think Melton is in that same category too. Because he's a
similar kind of player.
Yeah.
He's got some Jonathan Jones in him too.
Yeah. Those are your day 2 guys?
Yeah.
All right. Day 3. I'm going to keep it local.
Okay.
Elijah Jones from BC. another really good athlete, another longer guy, another guy that can play some press man coverage. I think that there's a lot to like about him. He's kind of my day 3 Cam Hart, not as quite as he doesn't have the film against like a Marvin Harrison Jr. or something like that where you can say, oh, this guy can be like a number 1 corner, right? But I think Elijah Jones, we're talking about that Jason McCourty, right? Just who's that third rotational guy that can play, has some size, has athleticism to play outside. I like Elijah Jones from BC a lot.
Yeah, you wonder with him, he got dismissed from the team last year.
Yeah.
And no reason was ever given, so that's always a little...
Well...
If they're trying to do the character thing.
See, I'm not good at keeping track of all the character things, so that's a good call.
Okay. Look, I don't know what it was, but that's just always something that, and sometimes I miss stuff like that too. Like, yeah, there's so many players, but
you know me, I'm on the film.
You're watching the film.
And
yeah. He wasn't dismissed for anything that happened on film.
No.
So on the boundary, I'm sorry, I got to give you 3 players here.
Yeah, that's fine.
On the boundary, I like Josh Newton
from TCU.
Yeah,
Go Frogs.
Josh Newton is interesting. I feel like I do that too much. I say he's an interesting prospect. Like, of course he is. I'm talking about him. Josh Newton at this time last year was a top 100 pick. He was a borderline first-round pick at this time last year. And he goes back to school. He didn't have a great season. And then I think teams take a closer look at him. And it's like, is he a pure boundary corner? Is he a tweener? But you know who loves tweener cornerbacks? The New England Patriots. And the dude can play.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to question that. The dude can play. So I'm a little surprised he's mocked as low as he is right now, which is like mid-day 3. I think he's going to end up going higher than that. He looks like a fit. Jarvis Brownlee, who had a great Senior Bowl, super physical cornerback, tone-setting cornerback. I really like him. And then the other guy I like for them, this is middle day 3, is Jaylen Simpson from Auburn.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the conversation.
He was on my list, too.
So this goes back to the conversation we were just having. Jaylen Simpson was a starting boundary corner for 3 years at Auburn, and then last year moved to free safety. And he had I think it's the 3rd highest coverage grade of any safety in the SEC last year in his first year playing it. So what have we spent the first hour of this show saying the Patriots need? A 3rd rotational boundary corner and a rotational free safety. Jaylen Simpson can maybe do both.
Yeah, I was hoping Elijah Jones could do both, but then he just told me he got kicked off the team.
Sorry.
So.
Jaylen
kind of burst in my bubble.
I think Jaylen Simpson's just a better player too.
Maybe he had a good Senior Bowl week.
So
that's why he was on my list.
Jaylen Simpson, if you draft him, you're going to use him as a free safety sometimes. You're going to use him as a 3rd corner sometimes with Jonathan Jones and Christian Gonzalez rotating, and like that, he's going to play. And will that be his role permanently? No. Eventually, you'll probably find a more permanent place to stick him, but he's a guy that can come in and gives them a couple things that they need. Yeah,
I really liked him down in Mobile. I thought he was really good in one-on-ones, better than I expected him to be. I thought maybe he would get beat over the top a little bit in those one-on-ones, and that's why the safety thing has been a part of the conversation, right? Not exactly a dynamic man-to-man guy, but I think that he can play pretty much both roles, like you said. I agree with that. And Josh Newton's an interesting player. He's a little bit light, he's long and light. So he does get pushed around a little bit sometimes, but
he'll push back. That's the thing.
So,
that's what you like about him.
That one TCU game I went to really getting a lot of run for me in this draft process because that's how I discovered Jared Wiley. Not that I discovered Jared Wiley, but me personally.
Well, no, but you discovered you went last year, right?
Yep.
No, so you saw him because you were texting me during the Colorado game that you liked him.
Yeah, because I saw him against West Virginia.
You didn't. The Colorado game was the first game of the year, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I saw him at the Colorado game. Was like, who's this tight end?
And then you
saw him
in person. Yeah.
The other guy that really popped off is I'm sitting there talking to Bradley Amos, who's knows TCU inside and out because he went there. I'm like, who's the corner? This corner can play. Josh Newton.
Well, he was. Remember last year, Tomlinson. Why am I blanking on his name?
Yeah.
Travius Tomlinson.
The cousin. LT's cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He, I think is his cousin or whatever.
Or nephew. You're right.
Yeah.
Nephew.
He was their number 2 corner, as good as he was, and he won the Jim Thorpe Award. He was their number 2 corner behind Josh Newton.
Yeah, because Josh Newton's like a true boundary corner.
Right.
Whereas Tomlinson is more of a slot. So, yeah, he can play. I think that, like I said, I think play strength is a little bit of a concern just in terms of in play. Like I get what you're saying that he'll give it back, but I think that there's a lot to like about his cover talent.
There's a lot of the guys in this draft, like Mike Sainristil, like Max Melton, like Josh Newton, that are college boundary corners Well, Sanders Still's different, but
yeah.
Max Melton, Chris Abrams-Drain, Josh Newton, who were pure college boundary corners. Who
I know. I was about to say that.
Really?
But we were on a roll, so I was going to do that when we just finish your point, and then we'll talk about that.
There's a lot of boundary. There's a lot of guys who are pure boundary corners in college.
Yeah.
Who are like 5'10", 5'11", that the NFL is going to look at and say, we don't value this guy as high as the tape suggests we should because we think he's going to be a slot corner in the NFL and he's going to have to go through that transition. The Patriots thrive on those guys. So even going down to like Beanie Bishop from West Virginia, who had the fastest 40 of any player at the Big 12 Combine, was second in the nation last year in pass breakups. There's a ton of those kinds of guys that if that's what the Patriots are looking for, they're going to have options.
So you want my Josh Newton comp?
Yeah.
On the field.
Oh, boy.
On the field. Jack Jones.
Okay. I could see that.
Jack Jones. Little Jack Jones in him. He's got...
It's a little smaller, isn't he?
It might be a little bit smaller, but, lighter, more of a... not exactly like... you don't look at him and he's not physically imposing, but really good ball skills, really good cover talent, feisty. Jack Jones, maybe we learned a little bit about the feistiness, but, he's that type of guy.
Yeah. And,
but all right, let's take a quick detour. I want to answer some of these emails, and I also want to talk about the news that Morrell just delivered to us that O.J. Simpson, if the glove don't fit, it quit. Gone at 76, dead at 76. O.J. Simpson, thank you for the Kardashians, right? We can thank him for that.
Yeah.
We can thank him for the white Bronco. The Bronco is making a comeback, though, Barth. I'm not old enough to really remember too much of O.J. Simpson playing, but certainly one of the most, what's the word, controversial athletes of all time, I think is an easy way to put it. I always think it's funny when we go to Buffalo that his number is still in their Ring of Honor. Which is an interesting decision by the Bills. O.J. Simpson, you have an O.J. Simpson take? You have a thought?
I would just say he's somebody that at a time when football was really taking off was a superstar in the sport. And from a football point of view, I think, he's somebody that certainly helped the game get where it is today.
Yeah.
Obviously, tremendous impact on American pop culture as well, off the field after his playing career, in multiple different ways. But, yeah.
Have you ever watched the FX special?
Oh, so good.
Good.
So
good.
Good
TV.
Yeah.
Obviously a dramatization of the situation, even though it was dramatic anyways. It didn't really need it. But like the O.J. Simpson thing, the thing that I always go back to is that they interrupted the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
To breaking news to break in.
Have you seen the 30 for 30, June 17th, 1994?
No.
So that day is I gotta
it's
look
the earthquake too, right? The in California.
Yeah. So it's considered like the busiest sports day of all time. So you had Arnold Palmer in his final U.S. Open. The beginning.
No one cares about that.
No, you're not. No, you're not going to say that on the first day of the Masters.
No.
Absolutely not.
I can't wait to go home and watch all 4 rounds of the Masters.
You had
Is Tiger
Arnold. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You had Arnold Palmer on playing his final round at the U.S. Open. You had the opening of the 1994 World Cup. You had the Rangers Stanley Cup parade. Game 5 of the NBA Finals. There's some big thing with Ken Griffey Jr. I don't remember what it was, and then the O.J. Bronco chase.
Yeah.
And seriously,
that wasn't the earthquake day. Why did I think that?
But the 30.
I'm not a historian.
The 30 for 30. If you watch it, there's no narration. It's just news clips from the start of the day to the end of the day. It's incredibly well done. I definitely recommend watching it, especially if you're somebody who's interested in sports media.
Yeah.
Just the way you see it all play out is incredible.
Yeah, it was, look, 94, I was 2 years old, so I'm not going to sit here and say that I remember the O.J. Bronco chase, but it's so iconic that even as somebody that didn't necessarily live through it, you can see the Bronco, you can see the news and exactly what it looks like. And obviously there's been a lot of different fallouts from it, TV shows, documentaries, the Kardashians, all this kind of stuff. So it's wild. It's a wild character. I don't even know how else to put it. Controversial. A couple of these emails. So Ari Reisman, I think is how I would emails us, and he tells us as one of the first suggestion, he emailed in a while ago. He said a couple months ago, back, and was the first person to say on our air, at least, that JJ McCarthy was an option for the Patriots in the first round. At least he claims. I don't know if that's true. But his question,
wait, what was it? Say that again?
He emailed into our show.
Yeah.
Back in months ago, and was hyping up JJ McCarthy.
Okay.
So he's saying that it was the first time that we started really talking about JJ McCarthy seriously.
Yeah.
His question is has your thoughts and opinions about JJ to the Patriots changed because he sees him as a great fit in their system? My answer is no. My thought has not changed, and this has been important to me, because me, Alex, I have some recency bias, and I can sometimes...
Yeah, I was getting really nervous about you watching JJ McCarthy.
I can sometimes change my opinions on things in the draft, and I let other opinions... I've tried really, really hard to stay consistent with these quarterbacks wire to wire this year because I just want to trust my instincts on it. I watched the film back in January. I watched the film. I went to a couple pro days this year of these guys. I just want to be consistent about what I'm seeing. The biggest thing that I see with J.J. McCarthy that I just can't get over in my head is, to me, he is just not a good enough playmaker at the position to take him 3 overall. I'm not saying that he's going to be a terrible NFL player. I'm not saying that. He might be. Any one of these guys might be.
Right.
But I'm not saying he's a terrible prospect. What I'm telling you is that if you're going to draft a quarterback at 3 overall, that guy has got to be a game changer. That guy has got to change the fortune of your franchise. You have to be a different team the day after you draft that player. And when I watch J.J. McCarthy at Michigan, what I see is a guy that, when he's on his first read and he's on time and he makes a throw to the number one read in the progression, he can make some really pretty throws. He can. He had a really, really nice one in the national championship game on a deep over route to Roman Wilson, right in the bucket, dime. He can make those types of throws. But what I see with him on film is a lack of just processing and imagination where he's seeing the whole picture. And so a lot of the time he'll just have tunnel vision for the first read, and he'll miss the second read in the progression that's even more open for a bigger play.
Yeah,
will be missed on film. So in the box score, it's a completion, right? And it counts as a completion, and it looks like a completion. It's a completion. But then when you watch the film, you see, all right, well, he got an 8-yard completion when there might have been a 75-yard completion on
who
film.
Does this sound like? Who did we used to complain a lot about doing that?
The tunnel vision?
Yeah.
Zach Wilson?
Mac Jones.
Oh, I was going to say Zach Wilson.
Oh, well, like rookie Mac Jones.
Yeah.
Like more NFL. He didn't do that in college as much, but...
You need that player, whether you want to call it a playmaker, whether you want to call it creative. Like, he's got to be a guy that makes explosive plays happen because of his eyes, his instincts, his arm talent and physical traits, obviously, as well. And I just don't see those things with J.J. McCarthy. So it's not that I think that it's outlandish that he's in the first round conversation. I just think it's outlandish that he's in the top 5 conversation.
Yeah, if you're drafting at 3, so I don't think J.J. McCarthy is as safe as a pick as everybody says. But if you're drafting at 3, the goal shouldn't be safe. The goal should be upside.
Yeah.
If J.J. McCarthy comes in and is fine and Drake Maye goes on to be like an MVP candidate, you missed.
Yeah.
You missed. And could Drake Maye be a bust? Absolutely. But you're picking this high. The one thing the Patriots have is time. I take the big shot. Absolutely, I would take the big shot.
Yeah, I just look at it this as I've used this comp multiple times. I'll just go through all 3 of my comps for these guys. Drake Maye, to me, is in that Allen Herbert mold.
Yeah.
I think some people see Herbert, but I see more be a little bit more Josh Allen because of some of the playmaking off script.
Right.
Some people call it recklessness. Some people call it playmaking. It depends on where you fall on that line, right? Of the lefty throw and 3 guys are hanging on him and he's throwing the ball down the field, right? Like those types of things are either you look at it and you're like, that's a gunslinger, that's a playmaker, or you look at it like that's a turnover waiting to happen. That's your opinion. I see more of that on film with Drake Maye than Justin Herbert. Like Justin Herbert to me was always the prototypical pocket quarterback.
Sure.
So that's why I use Josh Allen. With Justin Fields, or excuse me, with Jayden Daniels.
Spoiler.
I have a tough time calling him Lamar because I think that they're very, very different in terms of where they attack the field. Like Lamar peppers between the numbers. Like that's his area. Seams, slants, like that. Lamar loves throwing between the numbers from all the way back to Louisville. But in terms of how you guard him and how you defend him, game plan wise, Jayden Daniels is going to impact the game like Lamar does in terms of his mobility. There's a lot of overlap with his passing profile, and I wrote about this today on Patriots.com, with Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts, right, where the middle of the field is out. Like, he's not going to throw to the middle of the field. That's just not his area. He wants to throw down the field and outside the numbers. Like, that's where he wants to push the ball. If you can get him in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, those level of weapons like they have in Philly, then he's going to be able to be just fine as a passer, maybe even really good as a passer. But if you're going to put him in an offense like what Justin Fields was in Chicago, where he doesn't have those outside winners, it's going to be tough because he's not going to make the in-rhythm anticipatory throws over the middle of the field to keep that offense afloat. That's Jayden Daniels. J.J. McCarthy, I stick to this. He's Brock Purdy to me. J.J. McCarthy is Brock Purdy. If you're in an offense where the scheme, the skill, talent, all those things are creating a bunch of first read throws for the quarterback, he can be on time and he can be accurate.
Right.
If you're an offense that needs to got your quarterback to be a playmaker and needs your quarterback to be a game changer and tilt the things in your favor, I just don't see J.J. McCarthy ever being that. So that's where I come with the safe thing. I understand what you're saying is that there's a lot of things on film about him where he's Zach Wilson.
Well,
like,
but here's what I'd say to that. So your thing is, if he's on a good team, he's going to be good. Yeah, probably most quarterbacks.
No, my thing is that if you are one of these guys like a Kyle Shanahan that doesn't need the quarterback to be the driving force of why your offense is good, then I think J.J. McCarthy is a nice fit for you. Like, I think J.J. McCarthy.
But that offense doesn't work without serious talent at the wide receiver position.
100%. I think J.J. McCarthy's a really, really good fit in Minnesota.
Oh, if he goes to Minnesota, he's going to be like a perennial Pro Bowler.
Because he's got KOC, he's got those two receivers. I think he'd be a really, really good fit
to be fair, Minnesota's the best landing spot for any of these quarterbacks. If I'm one of these quarterbacks, I'm hoping Minnesota trades up and gets.
But here's my point, I guess, with Minnesota, because I agree. It's the best landing spot.
Yeah.
My point is if I'm Minnesota, I kind of call the league's bluff on J.J. McCarthy a little bit, and I just wait.
Fair.
I wait for 11, and I'm just like, Patriots, you're really going to draft this kid over Jayden Daniels or Drake Maye? I don't see it. Commanders, you're not doing it.
Wasn't that what the Patriots did with Mac Jones?
Yeah, and it worked out. Not long term.
No, but they got the guy. Yeah.
In the draft, it worked out. So if I'm the Vikings, I'm not giving up my war chest to go trade up and get J.J. McCarthy.
I might get worried about the Giants doing something stupid at 6, but
don't they have J.J. McCarthy on their team?
No, they have bad Drake Maye.
I feel like they have J.J. McCarthy and Daniel Jones. I think it's similar.
J.J. McCarthy's not doing the rushing things Daniel Jones does.
No, he's not as good of a runner.
No.
I just, no. My opinion, long story short, that was a long answer.
Yeah.
My opinion does not change on J.J. McCarthy. Has not changed on J.J. McCarthy.
I mean, I didn't think there was a chance he was going to go in the first round. I didn't think the league was going to fall for all of this. So in that sense, my opinion's changed. But I still feel the same about him as a prospect.
There's a lot of opinions out there on these guys. And I'm not saying that my opinion's better than anybody else's or vice versa, right? I'm not saying that. I understand that there's a lot of opinions. But to me, the two people that I put on a pedestal this time of year in terms of draft analysis, Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler. I think they're the two best draft analysts in the game right now.
Thorne?
Well, for offensive line, sure. But those two guys in terms of like big media draft guys, I think they're the two best guys out there right now.
Yeah.
Both of them have it Caleb, Maye, Daniels, McCarthy, 1 through 4. Both of them have it the same way.
All right.
The people that get into the conversation, like these former quarterbacks and stuff like that, see it a little bit differently.
Did you hear Merrill Hodge?
Yeah, Merrill Hodge.
That was wild.
Well, Merrill Hodge also is looking for a job. So,
Fair.
Yeah. But all these former quarterbacks and stuff like that, when I look at it, I reason why I value Dane and Daniel Jeremiah's opinion so much is because those guys look at it like scouts. Like those guys look at it like GMs in the NFL, like front office people. I think a lot of these former quarterbacks look at it as coaches. Like if I was this guy's quarterback's coach, who would not get me fired? And I think that these Jeremiah and Brugler look at it how the front office would look at it, and that's how I think you should look at the draft. I think the coaches are the ones that get involved, frankly, a little bit too much and mess the whole thing up. Like, they come in and they fall in love with the guy in an interview, and now all of a sudden we have N'Keal Harry over A.J. Brown.
Right.
You know, like, that's how I feel about the coaches aspect of it. So I really think that's going to be the consensus. I think that's going to be how the board falls on draft night, and all this other stuff has been hot air in between. That maybe I'll be wrong.
I still think Daniels is going to go second, and I think he should. I have Daniels as my second best quarter. It's close. The margin's very close.
Yeah,
and I've talked enough about that. But yeah, I mean, I think the gap between 3 and 4, and I still have Penix at 4 for what it's worth.
Yeah. So somebody did email in about Penix. Why not Penix? The thing about Penix is. And look, they if it comes out, I know with Christian Gonzalez, it came out after the draft that they sent Gerard Mayo out to Oregon, and Gerard Mayo was more involved in terms of interviewing him and getting to know him, and so they did a lot of homework that we didn't necessarily know about on Christian Gonzalez. So maybe there's a chance that they're doing stealth mode with Penix right now.
And they do have Tyler Hughes in the building.
Yeah, but with all that being said, if they draft Penix without doing the homework, then I think that is malpractice. Like, I think that's a dangerous way to live.
Yeah. For a guy with his injury history.
If you draft Penix without hosting him for a top 30 visit and not getting your own doctors to look at the injuries and look at his body and things like that and not get to know him at all, like, you can't do that. You can't draft him as the quarterback of the future without really putting in the work like they've done with these other guys. Like, there's no matter what way you slice it, even if they had a weekend with Michael Penix in Washington on a private visit, they didn't do as much homework on him as they did with Drake Maye and Jayden Daniels. They just didn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake.
That would, as much as I like Michael Penix, that would worry me a little bit.
Yeah. All right. There's one other question in here. I was on Claire, our friend Claire across the pond, her podcast.
There you go.
And she asked me a really good question. And she asked me about, depending on which quarterback they draft, Drake Maye, Jayden Daniels were the two guys we were talking about more. How would you then go about building the offense around that player?
Yeah.
In terms of the other players you're drafting, not the scheme, but in terms of the personnel.
No, it's a good question. So I would go tackle second no matter what.
I think that if you draft Jayden Daniels, you kind of have to.
I even think if you draft Drake Maye, just because I hate the idea of them doing left tackle by committee again.
Yeah.
Because we saw how that went last year. Now, I actually think, if we're going to read the tea leaves, I think they're going to go wide receiver with their second pick, whatever that is. And I'm going to pound the table for this take, Evan, because I've come to terms where this is, I am strongly in belief of this.
You're pounding the table for something. I like it.
I do not want to see the Patriots pick at 34. I don't care if you trade up. I don't care if you trade down. The way we think the board's going to fall, picking at 34 makes no sense. It just doesn't. If you like the players they realistically going to be targeting in that range, Tyler Guyton, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Kingsley, most of these guys are probably going to go late first round. Kingsley, maybe you can wait on. But, like, if you really like one of those guys, you have the ammunition, move up 3 or 4 spots and get them.
What ammunition?
You have 8 picks. It's 34, 103, and 180.
Yeah, but you don't have like a ton. Like the picks
okay,
don't have a ton of value.
Or move back and add picks. I just don't think 34, 103, and 180. There was a trade last year between the Jaguars and Bucks that is almost exactly that. So that should work.
Yeah, I don't love giving up 103.
Maybe call it future fourth then. I don't know.
Just 103 is essentially a top 100.
You want
pick.
Cam Hart? I get it. You want
Cam
Hart.
No. It's just it's a top 100 pick. I mean, we're giving they have a chance. I know it's a fringe. It's 103. It's not 101 or not 99 or something like that.
So I'll say this. So if you want to wait,
guys.
Then, and all those guys go, the tackles and receivers go, trade back. Don't force yourself to pick at 34.
Yeah,
that's kind of my point.
Obviously, if the board falls in a certain way. But I'm not super eager for them to trade back up into the first round. I think it'd be fun, and I think it could have a lot of dividends. Like, let's say if they draft Jayden Daniels and BTJ for some reason slides and he's like available at 26 or 27, and you want to trade up and pair them together, then sure, like have at it, go wild. But I think that there's tackle. I can see where you're coming from, that it drops off, and that does worry me. Receiver, I think there's way too much receiver talent in this draft for me to trade up for a receiver. I love A.D. Mitchell. I love A.D. Mitchell. But what's the difference? Is there a big enough difference between A.D. Mitchell and the guys that are going to go on day 2 of this draft at that position? I don't know.
I kind of think just because of the position he plays within the position as an X.
That's fair. I guess from a body type perspective.
If that's the kind of player you want. But the point being, I think that reading the tea leaves, they're going to go receiver. I would go tackle with the second pick, whoever you draft at quarterback. The difference to me is when you do eventually pick the receiver, I think with Drake Maye, you maybe look at a guy with a little more over-the-field stuff, maybe a guy like a Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson, somebody like that, where even Johnny Wilson, if you're drafting Jayden Daniels, I'm going and I'm getting a more vertical. As weird as this is going to sound,
yeah,
is Tez Walker almost a better fit with Jayden Daniels than he is with Drake Maye?
Maybe. I think with Jayden Daniels...
Stylistically, taking out the fact that they already have chemistry with each other.
Yeah, Jayden Daniels is definitely going to need somebody that can win on a slot fade.
That's what I'm saying,
And have a little bit of catch radius
Yeah.
as well. So that's why with Jayden Daniels, I think tackle is so important to me for 2 reasons. Obviously, the size. If he starts taking a bunch of hits at 210 pounds, we're going to be in trouble.
Right.
The other thing is that he does take a lot of sacks. And he's not very, even though he's fast in the open field, he's not very evasive in the pocket. He's not very elusive in the pocket. So I think you're going to need a sturdy offensive line that's going to protect him. He also doesn't have the biggest arm in the world. So if you're asking him to throw off his back foot, off platform, not within a muddy pocket, congested pocket, like that's going to be problematic too. So I look at a guy like Daniels, and if you're truly projecting him to thrive and be like a really, really good player, like you need to have like an Eagles-like offensive line in front of him. And I think that's why I would probably go tackle with that second pick. Whereas with somebody like Drake Maye at 225 pounds with mobility, am I that worried if he's got to take some hits and move around back there and get off his spot? Not really.
But I feel like when you phrase the question that way, it predisposes the idea that the 2 answers have to be different. Like, I feel like there's almost this instinct to go to, well, okay, I'd go tackle with one receiver with the other. I don't think so. I think with both of them, you take the tackle second because that's just what the offense is.
I just think that there's a really good chance that the talent at receiver is better at 34 than the talent at tackle. So,
but
I would prioritize tackle with Daniels because of the things I said, but I don't think that Drake Maye is going to be as
So you can say it's more
line.
important. You can say it's more important with one than the other. But to your point about the yes, the talent at receiver is going to be better at 34 because it's a better receiver draft.
Right.
You have to look ahead. What's the talent going to be at 68? You take the better. Would you rather? Because it's the totality of it. You take the more talented receiver at 34. Now, what are you doing at 68 at tackle? Would you rather have the 34 receiver and the 68 tackle, or the 34 tackle and the 68 receiver?
Well, it depends on who's on the board. But
But you have to kind of look ahead and say, all right, receiver, realistically, you don't know exactly, but you have an idea. Receiver's going to drop from this to this. Tackle's going to drop from this to this. And I think you look at the drop at tackle, especially if Patrick Paul goes higher than he's projected to, which should. You're not getting a year one starter at tackle at 68. You're just not. You're now kicking the can on tackle down to next year, and it's Chooks Okorafor and then a rotation. Whereas if you take the tackle at 34, you're probably going to get maybe not a week one starter, but a year one starter, and I still think you can get contributing wide receivers at 68.
Yeah, I think you're right about in terms of the talent on the board. I just think it's difficult, as always, to guess who's going to be exactly what names are going to be available at both picks. But I guess maybe I like the 68 tackle options a little bit better than you. Like I think like guys like Roger Rosengarten, Blake Fisher. I think those guys are. I could see some of those guys being able to start right away, especially Rosengarten, who's played a ton at Washington.
Maybe Rosengarten would be the one guy.
Yeah. So I think that there's some guys at 68 that maybe can fit. I don't know if he can play right away because it's going to be a big leap for him. But the kid from Yale, I think has starter caliber traits, definitely. At left tackle, even. Like maybe he could play right away. I don't know. Like it depends on if he can get up to speed and with the play speed and all that kind of stuff right away. Physicality. All right. Let's get back to the defense because we got 15, 20 minutes here.
Yep.
Let's go to edge defender, edge rushers. I think this is an important spot for them. I think that there's
Everybody's in a contract year.
Yeah, everybody's in a contract, well, except Jennings, and depending on where you want to put Keon White. I think the biggest thing though with this is that the guys that I put on the list, I think pass rush upside is more important.
I'm looking at pass rushers. I'm with you on that.
Because like they're gonna have Jennings, they're gonna have Keon White. If they need that guy to just set the edge of the defense, they're gonna have guys to be able to do that. Yeah. They need Uche.
Yep.
That maybe is a little bit more well-rounded, but in general, in Uche. I do think that we should spend 30 seconds on Dallas Turner, just because he is the best defensive player on the board, probably.
He should be the first defensive player off the board.
Yeah, I think Brian Burns is a great comp for him. I think that's exactly who he is. He's not Will Anderson. He's not as well-rounded against the run as Will Anderson. He's more raw, he's more of like a toolsy edge guy that's going to develop over the course of time. But his film is, you can see it. You can see the movement. You can see the bend, the explosiveness, the change of direction ability. But he's right now, in terms of being well-schooled, I wouldn't put him in that category.
Give me 15 seconds on Jared Verse, too, because I feel like he's being underrated in this draft.
So Jared Verse is one of those guys that is always tough for me because his winning trait as a pass rusher is power.
Yeah.
And I think it will translate, but for every Jared Verse, there's a Tyree Wilson where it doesn't translate.
Sure.
So I think that's the one thing that you have to look at with Jared Verse is when teams start to stack the board and stuff like that, I think that some people are going to like the twitchy Dallas Turner, Letu Latus of the world better just because of the way that they move.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think going from there, I mean, I've talked about Braylon Trice. If Bill Belichick was still here, you could fit Braylon Trice for a jersey right now.
Yeah.
From Washington, he's that kind of player. But I think the earliest guy we look at for the Patriots has to be Austin Booker.
Yeah,
they hosted him.
That was my guy.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Really good tape for Austin Booker. The catch with Austin Booker, he played 505 snaps total at Kansas.
Yeah.
That's it.
After being a backup at Minnesota for 3 years.
It's one of the
he came out of nowhere.
Smallest sample sizes that I've seen for a guy that's projected to go this high. Mims is another one of those guys, the tackle from Georgia. He had 800 career snaps. So we're still at least talking about a half a season more of playing time for Mims than for Booker. But when you turn on the film with Booker, awesome athlete, like skill, rush talent off the chart, really slippery, bendy, very good at slithering and slipping blocks in the run game, really long. He's like 6'3", 6'4". He's got really good arm length and he knows how to use it, and he has got some rush talent, man. Like he can really get off the ball, he can bend around the corner, he's got some inside counters to his game. For somebody that didn't play, it's amazing how well schooled he is.
He just put the work in. You assume he's a guy that's a very hard worker, stayed after practice. Yeah, and he's flying up draft boards right now. I think that as many teams visiting with him or having him for visits as they did, I think the external, the media is starting to catch up on, there's really something here. So that's the day two. I mean, he'd be my day two guy also.
Austin Booker.
You probably got to take him at 68.
So the tape against Texas, which is 2 draftable tackles at Texas, one next year that could be a first-round pick at left tackle, and then Christian Jones on the right side, torched both of them. Yeah. Like couldn't block him. Had like 6 pressures.
He was really good, I think, against Oklahoma too, right? Yeah, and they have 2 guys in the draft this year.
Just really incredibly small sample size, but man, like what a film he has.
Is he defensive Amarius Mims?
Similar. That I would say that's probably the comp. Like freaky athlete. The one thing about him that he'll need to add some weight and some
he's
mass.
Small.
He's lean. But in terms of rush talent, it's really, really good.
I saw NFL Zerline has him comped to Max Crosby. Which is obviously pretty lofty.
Yeah, Max Crosby.
I think that was him. Let me double check now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I thought I saw that comp. I don't know. I don't know who I would have him comp to. The difference between him and like a guy like Uche.
Yeah, Zerline had Max Crosby.
Is that I think Booker is much more instinctual against the run. He's not going to take on blocks against the run, but he can slip blocks against the run really well because he's so laterally quick. He just moves really well on film. Really impressive. And when you see him against Texas and you see him against those tackles that are going to be NFL guys and it pops off at you. The other day 2 guy that I would say is, of course I'm blanking on his name, from Alabama. Alabama.
Braswell.
Yeah. Braswell is a linear up the field rusher. Like Booker's got lateral quickness. Like Booker can counter and go inside and outside. Braswell's going to go right through you to the quarterback with speed to power. Not the biggest guy, like he's like 250, 255, which is pretty big for nowadays, but it's more about like the vertical speed to power, explosiveness that you see. He's going to be really good on stunts. He's going to be really good at pressing the pocket. He's going to be really good off the edge in terms of those things. A little stiff, like doesn't necessarily have inside counters, like I said, not like a spin move, arm over type of guy. But if you just want a guy to dent the pocket and use that power and convert it from the speed and explosiveness off the ball, he definitely can do that. And if you're, what Alabama would do a lot of is they would rush him with the speed to power, and then they would loop around a tackle and close the pocket with the tackle. Yeah, because they would know that Braswell would get up the field and create that pressure, and so then when the quarterback would step out to his right and up or something like that, they would close the pocket with a looper coming around. I always love watching Alabama's defensive line because their rush coordination is always fantastic. Yeah. And but he's one of those guys that you're going to have to do those types of things with and protect him, because if you just want to give him carte blanche to go after the quarterback, he's going to get caught up the field. Like that's going to happen.
You're also going to have to take him at 34. So should we move on to guys they might actually take now that we've done all that? You know my guys, Mo Camaro.
Yeah.
At 103 from Colorado State. You talk about Josh Uche. I think he plays similar to he's built, he's bigger, he's shorter, but he's like more muscular.
Yeah.
First thing that stands out, high motor player. The guy never quits on a play, and that can be a gift and a curse, and I think honing that is going to be big for him. But he's like 6 foot 250 out of Colorado State. If you had the same tape from a player who was 6'2" out of Colorado or out of any Power 5 school, he's a top 100 pick easily. I think he's a hidden gem in this draft. Went down, had a good Shrine Bowl. He can play the run a little bit too. For a guy who I think many are profiling as a pure pass rusher, he'll set an edge. Maybe not. I wouldn't use him as a primary edge setter, but he's not foreign to it. I think in that Josh Uche role though in the NFL as like a third down pass rush specialist, he could be very successful. Yeah,
so I knew you were going to pick him. So I went with a couple different guys.
Well, I want your thoughts on him, unless you didn't watch it.
I have watched him. I think that, the one thing that I look at with him is where are they going to go stylistically with their entire package? Like, are they going to allow Josh Uche types to actually go after quarterbacks?
Right.
Or are they going to still prioritize setting the edge and pocket integrity and all that kind of stuff? Which I thought last year.
Well, that's why I'm saying you just play him on third downs.
Yeah, last year I thought that was a detriment to Uche.
Yeah.
I think he had a down year partially because he was trying to play within the framework instead of just letting him go after the QB. I think one of the more head-scratching things, not to get off on a whole tangent about last year, but after Judon went down, why they didn't just let Uche just go up the field and get after the quarterback was shocking to me. Like that, you had no other pass rush. Like just even if he lets the quarterback out of the pocket, just let him go do his thing.
Right.
It was very bizarre. I look at Mo as one of those guys that needs to be able to do that.
Right. Well, but that's what I think. I wouldn't play him on 3 downs. I'm drafting him to 3rd and 10. Get in there, go get the quarterback. Like that's his role. He's gonna play 25, 30 snaps a game. And that's what I'm drafting him for.
The other guy two guys that I had, Nelson Caesar from Houston.
Like Nelson Caesar, yeah.
Yeah, so he's more of like an Anthony Jennings.
Another good Senior Bowl guy.
Yeah, like edge setter. He's not as big as Jennings. He's not he's a little bit more undersized than Jennings is. But when I watch him play, it's about hand strength, length, pad level, leveraging.
Good motor.
Yeah, like it's not about Mo is a get-off guy. Like, It's not about that. It's about all these other things with him. Really good Senior Bowl week, just using his length, using ability to create separation with the length and all that kind of stuff. Impressive player there. The other guy that I had is...
Say it. I want you to say it. Come on. Give me who I want. Who are you going to say?
I was going to say Gabriel Murphy.
Oh, that's way more boring than what I was thinking.
So Gabriel Murphy is the other UCLA edge rusher.
Yeah.
So Leitu Latu is going top 15, I think. Top 20.
Top 20 for sure, yeah.
Yeah. The other edge rusher, Gabriel Murphy from UCLA, when you watch Leitu Latu, you're like, this other guy's kind of good too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that this happens all the time, especially with the Patriots. Like,
they love doing that.
They love doing this. So they're going to go out and get the other guy that no one else, everybody is all focused on the first round guy. Gabriel Murphy, I think, is like a 102. Did they have 102 or 103? I don't know why I keep
103.
saying.
I noticed your mock draft had 102.
Did I do it wrong?
Yeah.
You
work for the team.
I know, right? Freaking A. 103, I think, is probably where you're going to have to take him.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's going to be gone.
Yep.
Really, more well-rounded. Like Latu is so bendy and explosive, but Gabriel Murphy, I feel like, is going to be one of those lunch pail guys for you. That's just going to be able to play and is also going to be able to rush the passer a little bit. Like he's got a little bit more pass rush than Nelson Caesar to him, which is why I like him.
No, I'm with you on that. I kind of look at him the same way. That hey, like, and the question is, Latu freed some things up for him, definitely, and I think that's why he's further down the board. But if you're drafting him to be a secondary pass rusher, great. A few other names I just throw out. Brennan Jackson from Washington State.
Yep.
Later day 3 guy, tremendous motor, tremendous effort, tremendous tackler. At the very least, he's a kicking game guy. Xavier Thomas from Clemson is an interesting developmental edge for me, a guy that, because realistically, if they draft an edge, they might not need him to play this year. You're probably drafting this guy for 25, so Xavier Thomas is a guy that can maybe step into that Josh Uche role for a year next year. And then you want to talk about really developmental. This is the guy I was hoping you were going to say because they had him for a visit, is Jalix Hunt.
No, I'm not going there.
No?
That's all you. The special teams guys are all you.
He's not a special teams. Former Cornell safety.
He's going to be
only played special teams. Transferred to
You
Houston.
literally just said he's not a
Christian.
special teams guy, and then you said only played special teams.
In college.
Yeah, he's going to be a special teams
guy. Early in college, went to Houston Christian last year, showed some growth as a pass rusher. If you really want a project, if you really want a true project, he's the guy. All right, I'm not going to keep going because I want to make you talk about linebackers and defensive tackles.
Okay, so we have to do these
really quick.
Pretty quickly.
Peyton Wilson would be a Belichick pick if he was.
So Peyton Wilson is another guy that has some injury red flags.
A lot of
to
injuries,
him, but the film is first-round caliber.
He's unreal.
Like hairs on fire type of player.
Am I lazy if I comp him to Luke Kuechly?
Yes.
Okay.
Because Luke Kuechly is a Hall of Famer. Don't comp linebackers
as a draft, cool, because he got hurt a bunch. Like he's a guy that's really
I
good
understand
linebacker.
what you're
got hurt
saying,
a bunch.
but he's Luke
All right, so
Kuechly's
it's
probably
lazy.
the best
So you answered
linebacker
my
of our
question.
generation.
All right, so you answered my question. It's lazy.
Yes. I think that the guys, that you think of, I heard a really good comp. The Dallas guys were saying Sean Lee.
Oh, yeah, and he also got hurt. That's I was being very lazy.
Yeah,
Sean Lee, good job.
Sean Lee, there you go. I think that was Marcus Mosier. I'm not going to take credit for that. But yeah, the one thing I love Drake Maye.
Yeah.
Watching Drake Maye try to get away from Wilson against NC State was tough.
Well, he ran like a 4.4.
That was tough for my boy.
As a 240-pound linebacker. He's unreal.
He's one of those guys that is sideline to sideline. Can play sideline to sideline, can play in coverage. He's going to be the first to the ball a lot. He can spy quarterbacks like Drake Maye.
He's a first-round talent. It's just the injuries.
Yeah, really good tape.
Yeah. Yep. The highest linebacker I like for them, and this would be you'd probably trade down from 68 or maybe trade up from 103 is Jeremiah Trotter.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Trotter. Junior.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying that, but his dad is the Eagles legend.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying that because it was that he's everything I want a linebacker.
How sad is it that it's Marvin Harrison Jr., Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
Well, but then Jerry Rice's son too.
Jerry Rice's son. Yeah, that's weird.
You could do an all-family mock draft. I should probably do that at some point. Jeremiah Trotter is everything I want a linebacker to be. He's big, he's mean, he's physical, he's smart, he's fearless. That's the guy I want in the middle of my defense, man. He's that kind of player.
Just like you just described his dad.
Well, he is. Tommy Eichenberg, Edwin Ulofoshio, and Jackson Sermon would be the other linebackers I have an eye on.
Okay, so I got different names, which is good.
Okay.
Day 2, and the reason why I picked both these guys is because the Patriots were at these 2 pro days watching the quarterbacks, we thought. Cedric Gray from UNC.
Yeah.
I think that he's got a lot of cover talent, like a coverage line. Both of these guys,
I
think, are more coverage linebackers. But he moved really well, like really impressive in the drills at UNC, I thought. Stood out to me, just his movement skills. He's almost moves like a safety out there.
Yeah.
So Cedric Gray is one. When I was talking, Cam Williams was talking at the draft preview party, mentioned, that they obviously got the quarterback with Drake Maye, but they also had a linebacker.
Yeah.
He was talking about Cedric Gray. The other one was Omar Spates from LSU, late day 3 guy. He moved extremely well in the field work that he did at the pro day. Basically, like a souped up safety. He's I think probably 225, 230. If that, he moved very well. I couldn't believe it. I was like, who is this guy?
I'll just say this. If you want a coverage linebacker, Ulofoshio from Washington had the highest PFF coverage grade of any linebacker in the nation last year.
Yeah, so those 2 guys, I just think that you go to, similar to what we were talking about with Gabriel Murphy, you go to the pro days for the quarterbacks, and all of a sudden you come away seeing these other guys, and you think, okay, maybe these guys too. All right, D-line.
You in or out on T'Vondre Sweat? I think that's the big question here.
Yeah, it's a good conversation that I wish we had more time for. But I think the big things with T'Vondre Sweat is that I think for the Patriots, if you're going to practice what you're preaching And what they're preaching is that they're going to be about culture building. They're going to be about getting the right guys in the building. It's not just the DWI Dane Brugler had in the Beast that guys were calling him a party animal. Guys were calling him, just not like that is in his background. Yeah. And the DWI is kind of just the tip of the iceberg and was almost like a ticking time bomb that something like this was going to happen. So all those things add up to me. Like, you can't preach that we're going to change the culture around here. We're going to get good character guys and then wasted a high draft pick on Devondre Sweat. It just doesn't add up.
That's where I'm at. I just don't, as much as I like him as a player, I don't think he's going to be on their board. I look at Dwayne Carter from Duke.
Yeah.
I love him for them. He's more of an athletic upfield defensive tackle, kind of like Christian Barmore. I know they have a lot of those guys, but a lot of those guys are in contract years. Dwayne Carter is a guy I like for them. The other, if they want the big nose tackle, I think it's Justin Rogers from Auburn.
Yeah, there's also a couple. That's the other thing is there's a couple of pure nose tackles that if you have the character concerns with Devondre Sweat, you don't necessarily need to take him. You know, like there's some other guys that can play.
There's not a ton of but I mean, because you talk about the size, how many defensive tackles are there in this draft that are over 320?
Well, no one's going to be 360
Nobody's going to be 360, but
yeah, I just think that there's other guys that can play that role that you don't necessarily, if you have the major character concerns like with Sweat, which apparently everybody does. It's not just this most recent incident. Then I could see some other
at
guys.
The combine there were only two other defensive tackles that were over 320. Justin Rogers came in at 6'6", 330. McKinley Jackson from Texas A&M was not a bad player. Came in at 6'2", 326. So those would be, if you want a nose tackle.
I think both of those guys could play probably best as shades, like in the one technique in the gap, and not necessarily playing straight up over the center like Sweat could.
But how many guys do that anymore? That's such a rare.
That's my point.
Like, that's as close as you're gonna get.
Yeah,
and that's my point. Like, you're not gonna. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. My day 2 guy is still Braden Fiske, but I don't think I'm gonna have him on my board for them because
it's not gonna make any sense.
I watched him. I watched him at the Senior Bowl. Obviously, that's why he's been my guy since the Senior Bowl. But I watched him on film recently, and he's an upfield player. Like, he's a guy that needs to use his athleticism and his speed and his get off. If they're gonna still be, we're gonna 2-gap, we're gonna hold the point of attack, and he's 290 pounds. It's not gonna happen.
So what about Chris Jenkins?
I liked Chris Jenkins a little bit more for them. I like Fiske more in terms of
I'm talking about for
them.
He's
going to be a better player.
Okay.
I think Chris Jenkins, the one thing that I always worry about is who is the Michigan defensive line was so dominant with the scheme and all that kind of stuff. Is he going to add anything in terms of one-on-one pass rush ability? If you're asking him to just press blocks and hold the line of scrimmage, I think he can do that easily. Is he going to give you to draft him that high? Because he's going to go, you're going to have to probably pick him at 34.
Right.
Is he gonna be enough of a pass rusher? Christian Barmore.
Yeah.
Christian Barmore was an early 2nd round pick. If you're gonna draft somebody there, he should have that pass rush ability. The other guy that I think is just such a patriot, just in the way he plays, is Justin Abuke from Alabama.
Yeah.
Just a classic 3-4 defensive end for the Patriots. A really good block penetrate or block presser, hold point of attack. Really just double team blocks. He doesn't really get moved very often. 2-gap extraordinaire. Perfect fit. Played this role in Saban's defense. Come play the 5 technique in our defense, and you would be just fine. Yep. He's not going to be a splash player. That's not his game. But he's going to take on blocks, and he's going to do a good job of it.
Yep.
That it?
Kickers.
No.
Yes.
No.
Give me one kicker. Name one kicker in the draft.
Oh, actually, I will say, I did mock a kicker in the 7th round at my latest mock draft.
Name him.
The Alabama kicker, Reichert.
Okay. What's his first name?
Will.
There you go. I like Harrison Mevis.
I literally just wrote it.
I like Harrison Mevis, so there you go.
Really quickly, we got to shout out our friends at DraftKings. Whether you're in the game or betting on the game, you'll need a game plan. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the New England Patriots, provides you with everything you need to build your personal betting game plan so you can get in on all the action while protecting safe bets. Visit DraftKings.com/responsible-gaming to learn more about all the safe betting tools DraftKings has to offer. Hope is here, 800-327-5050 or gamblinghelplinema.org. Must be 21 plus. Play it smart from the start. Game sensitive May. Physically present in Massachusetts. See DraftKings.com/responsible-gaming for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. I'm getting much better at that one. Hey, Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals for the official vehicle, the New England Patriots. Toyota, well, let's go to some press conferences.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.